Hey folks, it's Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and I have Dan from the Daily Prepper with me. Dan, how's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to be talking with you finally. And I mean, man, we agree on so many things. I think we have so many similar points of view. We just cannot stop talking. So
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. For the guys that may not know about you and such, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, you bet. And again, thanks so much for having me, man. This is really cool for me. I actually, as part of the introduction, I guess I could say, I first started really looking seriously at like prepping and survival and self-sufficiency in about 2010, and you were one of the first voices that I really was drawn to,
Oh, okay,
just because you'd been in it. So this is a cool thing for me. This is a treat. As far as like who I am and how I came to be here and stuff, I in 2010 was working with a pretty large survival gear manufacturer in the United States, a company called Guardian Survival Gear. Good company. They manufacture prepackaged survival kits, as well as some other things. They sell food. I mean, they have a pretty wide selection of products that they offer, and pretty good stuff. So I was working with them and helping them out with just some marketing, some different things. And I actually, just through working with them and kind of having a toe in that world,
right.
started to ask myself some more questions. What am I doing to prepare? Like, do I actually believe this stuff, or am I just selling it now, or what?
Right, right.
So the more time I spent around it, the more I realized that it just makes sense, and I realized that I wanted to take part in it. I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be able to have answers for the what if questions of life. And I was also married that year, 2010. I got married. That was an interesting experience. The first week after I got married, I was living in downtown San Diego, so not like a bad area, but not. I mean, there was a lot of passersby, and it was an apartment,
Yeah.
multi-story apartment and stuff. And there was a couple noises in the night. In fact, my wife and I were in bed and drifting off to sleep, and I remember hearing like the doorknob jiggle.
Oh man.
And in that very moment, I knew I needed to have guns. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to that hears noises in the night or anything, but it was just crazy how a lightning bolt just like hit my head, because now it wasn't about, okay, if I just get in a fight with somebody or he comes in and jacks my stuff. Now all of a sudden it was like, oh shoot, if somebody
I
comes in
have.
here right now, like I have a wife now, I have to be able to do some stuff. So without being too long about it, 2010 was kind of a big year for me where I started realizing that this stuff was important. At the same time, I thought it might be kind of fun to chronicle my own journey, and to pass along the things that I'm learning. I knew that there was 7,000 survival websites already, but I just thought it might be kind of fun for the people that knew me, to see that, almost more as a personal thing. And so I started taking some videos and things like that, and people, strangers and everybody kind of seemed to like them. So that's sort of how the Daily Prep got going, and really how I got, I guess, exposed to and into the ideas around survival.
Great. Yeah, I really like your approach about the level-headed kind of thing. Um, that's one of the things that I noticed the most. And would you agree that there's a lot of extreme attitudes towards survival and preparedness in general?
Yeah, definitely. Resounding yes to that question.
Right.
And this is something we've talked about before in videos and emails and stuff. But yeah, I think there's a lot of extremism in all walks of life, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot
that's
of extreme politics. There's a lot of extreme religion. There's a lot of extreme parenting. There's a lot of extreme fanatics about like movies and different things. And maybe sometimes there's a place for it, and maybe sometimes there's not. But yeah, I agree with the fact, definitely the statement that there's a lot of extremism in survival, and I think that along with that, I think that most of the time it's probably not healthy. I think that if you go to my site, the big headline that's like the very first thing you see is I help average Joes become prepared, and I think that that's sort of what my journey's been about, is I never, like, I wasn't in the military. A lot of people think you got to be like in the military to be a prepper, or grow up on a farm where you're like ranching cattle and you know how to do all this stuff. And I mean, that would have been great, but I wasn't that. And so really, like, the message I try to share with people is that average Joes can be preppers, or at least be
You're
prepared.
not in the military, then you know nothing about survival, man.
I know, man. I know. No, but I would definitely agree with that statement, and I just think that it becomes distracting, and I think that it does hurt the message a little bit because the messengers get in the way. It gets seen as like this thing which is, you know, crazy and all that, and like there's a million other videos that you can find on this very topic, but I just think that there's so many average Joes that are doing this stuff. And that's kind of the story I'd like to tell. You can still be a skateboarder. You can still have kids. You can have a normal job. You can live in the suburbs even if you have to. You can do all these things, and you can still have a pretty good amount of preparedness in place, you know, without having to be like cutting yourself off from civilization and spending $1 million on your preps, and, you know, it's taking some of those steps. So
yeah,
it's kind
one
of
of the things that I noticed is that the idea of and this is something I come across a lot, and it has been going on for years, especially in the forums. You notice guys saying all the city people, as if city people were some breed of stupid. You know,
the whole world lives in cities, man.
I mean,
like 98% of people live in like some sort of city, whether it's a big city or a small city. Like,
and they go for like, yeah, because they're not country people like us. First, I really doubt that they're the backwoods survival experts that they think they are in many cases.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that because you live in a farm or because you live somewhere a little bit outside a main city, I mean, if what I say is that if you have a road that leads to where you live, you're not really that different from anyone else.
Right. Yeah.
Right? This idea that people that live in cities are useless and are a drag to society, and everyone that lives in the country is a wise, cosmopolitan, educated farmer that reads, you know, about various topics in candlelight after a hard day of honest hard work, you know, salt of the earth kind of people. That may be true, but it's not like you can put people in a box as city people stupid and country people the best there could possibly be. Right?
Upper echelon. Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's funny, man. I have a video. You might have seen it. I don't know, or, you know, some of the viewers might have seen it. But it's a video that I did maybe a year or so ago, a couple years ago, called "The 8 Biggest Mistakes That Preppers Make." And one of them was I talked about like the lone wolf mentality, and like you get on forums, you get on people's, you know, websites and stuff, and it's just like, I am a lone wolf. It's me against everybody. You can't trust people and blah, blah, blah. And like when the shit hits the fan, I'm running for the woods, and like all I need is like all, you know, the whole line, the whole spiel. Yeah. And my thing is, what I always tell people is I'm like, people have existed in some sort of community since the beginning of time. Like that is how people exist. Like people don't exist on their own. Like survival happens in groups, and that's why we live in cities today, is because and granted, again, it could be like a small city, small little village even, which is fine. I mean, those are great. Or it could be like, you know, New York City, and those are both different versions of cities, and they both have their own problems and stuff, but really by and large, like that's how we've made it, is by living together with other people. I mean, so
I actually had this, I don't remember exactly where it was, but I was having this same discussion with someone else. And I was explaining to them, cities are the most resilient version of humanity that you could possibly have. Some cities have been standing for literally for thousands of years. Right. And in general, cities are much more resilient than people give it. I mean, there's a lot of focus on how fragile the grid is, and the grid is always going to be falling to pieces because of every little possible thing, which, you know, I tell people, if they have electricity in Bolivia, they will have it wherever it is that you are. If they manage to have tap water in places like Paraguay, in somewhere in US, someone's going to be figuring it out how to put water. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have preparedness in place
Sure.
in case you turn the faucet and not a drop comes out. I've been there and it's not pretty.
Right.
Being without water for a week, but at the end of the day, it's something that gets fixed. It's not as if you have to think of cities burning down and everyone evacuating and the refugees from the cities spreading to the small towns where the good solid of the earth people will kick them out, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree, man, and I think that I don't know that I mean I don't really preach like big cities. I
Yeah.
think that big cities come with a fair amount of threat and risk and things like that.
Yeah.
But just you're going to be living with some kind of people. Like even if it's like even if you have a piece of property and you've put 9 houses on it for family members and things like that. I mean that's your city. Like that's your little community. And really like even if you do live on a farm that's 212 miles from everybody, like you still exist because of other people. Like you went and you bought the lumber for your house from somebody who also cut it down, you know,
It's
or from somebody else who cut it down or whatever.
not only that.
Like how do you get your food? Like do you grow every single thing or do you go to the store and buy something? Well, that store
Even
is there because of other people.
even if you do that, even if you grow your own stuff, you need the supplies you need, the fertilizer, the pesticides, the tools, the fuel.
Yeah.
Running a farm is massive amounts of work, and it's just as fragile or even more so than a city. A
Right.
farm, a real farm, not just a little garden in the backyard, but a real farm. It's so dependent. I mean, you are depending on the goodwill of the weather, of
Yep.
the animal getting sick, of the vet taking care of it and finding what the hell is wrong with it, poor thing that is
Yeah.
dying, and you don't know what's going wrong with it. It's very, very harsh life of living in a farm. It's not
Right.
this perfect dream world that, and I agree. The
And then
idea.
it's like, who's gonna buy that stuff? Like, if you're trying to be a farmer for your living, like, maybe you're just trying to grow it for your own family and that's it. But if you're trying to sell stuff, like, you gotta have people to sell it to.
It's extremely hard work, and in the old days, I mean, that's why you have lots of sayings involving farms and poverty, because it was a very tough life and still is, and every little thing from a draft to every little thing could leave you bankrupt for good, and you end up losing the so-called farm, you know, because
Yeah.
of that. So, and again, I'm not like saying that we all have to live in cities. I mean, I don't like living in a large city myself.
Sure.
Probably you don't either, right? We just try to find a balance between what you like and what you need so as to get along well.
That's a smart way to say it right there. It's just the balance of you know what you want and what you need. You know, I thought of one other thing. Maybe you've seen this guy already, or maybe you haven't. But there was a guy back in like the '60s, I believe, named Dick Brenneke, and he was this like carpenter
Right.
who built cabinets and things like that on a Navy ship. And when he retired, he took some tools, some very like rough hand tools, and he went up to Alaska, and with his little hand tools built himself a cabin out of logs. Like he chopped the logs down, he let them age for a summer, and came back like the next 6 months later or something when they cured a little bit, and then from that point on, he lived in Alaska for like 30 years by himself. And so he built his cabin with his own bare hands. I mean, he would go out and hunt and fish, and he stayed there through the winters and all this kind of stuff. There's some good documentaries on him. But you know what's funny is probably once every month or two, he still had a float plane come in, land, and bring him supplies.
Right.
So, I mean, you take anybody. You take the toughest, saltiest guy like Dick Brenneke, and they still need people. Nobody lives long.
If you look at some of the incidents where people have been cut out completely, like the father and son in Vietnam. I don't know if you saw that, those two, that they were living in the jungle since the Vietnam War, and basically when they found them, they were basically like animals. They didn't even know how to talk with each other. The tools they had taken had completely rusted off, and I mean, I do not envy that guy's life in any possible way, you know?
Yeah.
Or there was this other family, and I think they found them some time ago already in Siberia. I don't know what specifically had happened, but this guy picked up his wife and his kids, and they ran into a forest in Siberia, and they lived there for the rest of their lives. And I mean, some of their kids died because of hunger, because of they starved to death. Always, living on borderline starvation, in spite of being surrounded by a forest completely at their disposal, and them being some of the most salt of the earth Brazilian kind of people there could possibly be.
Yeah.
And I mean, stuff like their life changing completely because the pan they had taken with them had rusted off, and they had no pan for cooking some of this of the food, so they had to rely on cooking implements made of wood. So that changed their diet. I mean, a complete tragedy of a life, and that's supposedly the best outcome that some people think you could possibly have in a survival or preparedness situation.
Yeah.
And just don't see it working out that way.
Yeah, that's a big difference between the forums and reality.
Yeah, and you know what? As we were talking about before, this thing about focusing on the stuff that people like. You know, we're mentioning what
Like the hobbyists, survival hobbyists.
Focusing on guns alone as the only. What was your journey in terms of firearms and guns when you started getting into survival and preparedness?
Yeah, so I mentioned briefly at the beginning there that I had kind of an aha moment when I heard that noise in the night,
Right.
all that stuff. So growing up, I actually grew up in a household where there were no firearms.
No firearms.
My parents are not against them. In fact, my dad is very for firearms. Just for whatever reason, I mean, he wasn't a big hobbyist himself either. He wanted to have a firearm because it's the Second Amendment. And I think he looks at it very much as like the ultimate protection from tyranny, and also it protects against evil in the streets or in office. And so my dad was very pro firearms. I just whenever we talked about it and stuff, he didn't have bad things to say. But I just grew up in a house where they weren't, and that's changed now. So then getting out on my own, I was in college and working and things like that, and I just never really thought about it. It's not. I don't play a lot of video games. I don't fantasize about guns. So I think that maybe my path was a little bit different from some people that maybe do. And it really wasn't until I decided that I wanted to become prepared. The front door was preparedness, and then guns was like a back door, kind of. I got into guns. I got into emergency medicine. I got into communications, like ham radios. I got into canning, food stores. All this stuff was because I had already come through the front door prepping, and that's why this is my arrogant moment right now. But that's why I think I offer a pretty good voice for a lot of the average Joes out there, because I'm not trying to use prepping as some excuse so that I can keep fishing, or so that I can keep camping, or so that I can keep getting more food stores.
So I should justify,
I don't really care about that stuff.
Right. So I should justify having 20, 30, 40 different guns.
Yeah.
You don't feel the need to justify
7,000 rounds of 5.56 or whatever. Yeah, I look at that stuff strictly as preps. I mean, I even go fishing. I went fishing last week with a buddy of mine who's a great fisherman. I live in Utah, and so I don't know if I mentioned that, but I live in Utah. Lots of great fishing around, great rivers, streams, and so he got me out, and he fly fishes like it's his job. He gets out there and he just loves getting the perfect cast and matching the hatch with his flies and all that kind of stuff. And to me, the whole time I can't quit thinking fishing is a way I could get food if I needed food. That's it for me. When he catches the fish, and it's a 10-inch, brown trout, or a 12-inch brown trout that's 2 pounds. I'm like, dude, save that thing and we will eat it. This is gonna be so fun. And for him, it's no, you unhook it and let it go. Why do I want to keep it? But yeah, everything I do really is I just look at it as a prep. My hobbies are surfing, skating. I like little business ideas. I like reading. I mean, those are my hobbies. I like playing around with my dog and stuff like that. My hobbies really aren't going out to the range every single week and like,
What
putting down
what
like
dog do you
300.
have?
What's that?
What dog do you have?
I have a boxer pit bull mix.
Uh,
I think. I actually I rescued him from a shelter, so I don't know for sure, but he's been on some videos and stuff. He's a good dude.
okay.
But yeah, so anyway, I mean that's my long rambling answer to your question is I
Wh-
really don't.
What was the first gun you ever bought?
The first gun I ever got was a Smith. I got a Smith and Wesson M&P 9 compact. Good gun, great shooter. I bought it lightly used. It probably had maybe 2 boxes of ammo put through it. I bought it off a female in her maybe 40s or so, and I got a great deal on it. And the gun was in great shape. And a week later, Sandy Hook happened,
Right.
and things in the firearm world went crazy, and there was no guns available, and if they were super expensive, and so it was pretty fortunate that I got that when I did. But yeah, that was my first gun, and I still love it. I don't have a ton of guns, and it's a good shooter. I've gotten a little bit of training on it. I went and took 2 classes with it, and so
Okay.
I feel
Yeah,
secure
that's
in
good.
it. I know how to use it. My wife knows how to use it. She knows how to check the condition. But I'm definitely not the guy who has like an arsenal, with like 40 different guns and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I would place myself in that group of people that at some point had like way too many guns, and there was always a justification. I mean, I would have like no, but the mechanism of call. I would debate with people, and I still do,
Yeah.
But debating with people about the virtues of the Colt revolver compared to the Smith and Wesson revolver, and why it has a better, all of those little things, and even appreciate, I appreciate a detective special for what it is. I appreciate a Glock for what it is and such. But I completely see where a lot of people focus on guns simply because they enjoy it, like I do, but they lose focus on the place it has in the survival world or the preparedness world, whatever you want to call it, and cannot differentiate that from it's something you simply enjoy doing, which is perfectly fine. If you love doing it, why not? I always say life is too short, so do whatever you like, but don't lie to yourself.
Be honest about it. Yep.
If you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you have 100 pounds of overweight, buying another gun is not the main concern for your survival at that moment. If you are if you're in a completely disastrous condition personally in your relationship with your family, and your life is a complete mess, then maybe worrying a lot about China invading should not be, or how the UN is overtaking the world should not, maybe not your a priority in life.
Exactly. Yeah. You gotta, like fix your own family, fix your own situation. Like there's so many, and I'm glad we're kind of still talking about this, because I think if we were to go even deeper, like I think we're kind of looking at the symptoms right now, where it's like guys like guns, so they say that guns are prepping, so they go buy a bunch of guns. The food storage mom crew likes cooking, so they say that cooking's prepping, so they get super, super, super into cooking even more, and they like learn all these recipes, and they like get so into it. The ham radio nerds, those guys like talking on ham radios. And so, and nothing wrong with that, but like if that's their hobby, like they get super into that. I think all these things are kind of symptoms. I think the bigger, like the cause, maybe, I'm just shooting from the hip right here, but it sort of seems like the cause is that maybe they don't have other exciting things going on in their life, and so like the exciting, it would be exciting for them almost, like if
something happened
kind of.
I mean, I completely see how maybe the guy that is, the radio or electronic nerd type of guy that's obsessing and loving that sort of stuff, and he's spending every night hours each night going through what's the best equipment setup and which antenna works best and what setup, and they're fantasizing about how in a possible disaster, what they focus so much on is going to be saving the day, and they're going to be the heroes.
Because that's so much more exciting than regular life. Like,
right. In a similar way, like the guy focusing on guns and farms and thinking, okay, I'm going to be king of the hill when things go wrong. I'm going to be shooting all the looters that come after me. The thing is this, many times, even though they have it in terms of self-defense, shooting and guns, right, which is something that I do love and I really do enjoy. Whenever I saw it happening for real, it never played out the way people think it's going to be happening.
Yeah.
It wasn't that someone picked up his combat gear set up in his bug-out bag and started shooting his AR or AK, mowing down looters by the dozens. It was a guy coming back from work, and when he was tired on a Monday night driving into the garage, he got jumped and he got mugged there. Or a mom coming back from the supermarket with the grocery bags here and the kid here, and there you go. And that was it. There was none of the things that a lot of people focus so much on. I think that's where, if you love doing it, we go back to that. If you love doing it, just do it, keep doing it. But don't kid yourself into how it's going to be happening for real. Yeah. How it's going to be playing out for real. That would be maybe one of the big differences.
That's a super smart way to say it, man. And you just kind of made me think, like, so I have another YouTube channel. I don't know if we probably haven't talked about this yet, but I have a YouTube channel called The Armed Citizen. Right. And it's a cool channel. It's mostly just news clips of armed citizens who are able to defend themselves. Right. Because that story, you know, that side of the story only gets told very briefly in passing. And then the other like 98% of the time we hear the other side of the story. So anyway, I have this channel and I really try to kind of champion the cause of the good that happens from people that are responsibly armed through this channel. Anyway, so you're totally right. All these like security cam videos that we have today and things like that, like when you watch the real footage of stuff going down, it's like it happens in 9 seconds. It's no less, you know, like 4 seconds, and then someone's running out or whatever, and it's just not sexy. It's somebody behind a counter that's freaking out, and there's like screaming, and you know, you get shot maybe as you're trying to defend yourself, and you know, so it's totally like you say. And then the other thing I kind of think of is, this touches on what we talked about a second ago, is like the whole like, this gun is the best gun for me because it's the only gun that can save my life, because I'm only gonna get an LWRC like AR-15 and it has to be
without cool of laughing just blows my mind.
Yeah.
I never quite understood.
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard about this because you're over across the pond now, but Detroit obviously is heating up a ton, and has been for the last 4 years. You know, they went bankrupt and really like a couple decades before that, but there's just this climate now in Detroit where crime is at an all-time high, but also the citizens starting to take their city back and fighting back is probably higher than it's ever been too. And there was a particular incident, I think it was in like maybe January, I want to say, of this last year, where there was it might have been more like February, I can't remember, but there was like 3 teenage thugs trying to break into this woman's house. They tried to break into her house, they weren't successful, and so she went out and she got I mean, these people are poor, right? So she went out and she got a camera, just this cheap little security camera, put it on her front porch, pointing at her front door, and then she got like a high-point carbine, just a crusty, like $200 like carbine, right? Yeah. And I believe that's what it was anyway. I'm pretty sure, 90% sure. Anyway, so a week later, these guys try to break in again, and this time we have a video of it all because she has that security camera watching the guys trying to kick her door in and whatever, and she yells at them and says, "I have a gun." They keep going, they don't care, and so she is on the door and discharges her weapon a bunch of times, and the guys go running. If you watch the video on my channel or anywhere, you can just Google it. you'll see actually one of the guys, this is in the snow because it's in the winter, one of the guys like drops, I think what he said was like, they said they had a gun too. And so he drops it, picks it up, and actually tries to re-enter the home again. And the woman just keeps firing. And eventually, like, that guy turns around and runs off too. And you look at that scenario, that's how it happens. You look at, like, okay, like any gun nut in the world needs to take a look at that, because that was a $200 high point carbine. It was not a fancy gun. In fact, those guns have failures to feed all the time. I mean, if you get in like forums and stuff, you'll hear every bad thing in the book about it.
It's kind of known as a crappy, not so good gun.
It's like down from a Taurus, like a few levels. It's not a good gun, but in that very moment, it did the trick. That $200 high point carbine has probably done more actual work than millions of dollars of guns across America, like fancy high end rifles.
I don't want to. I still value, you know, the right training and the right gun, you know. As you say, sometimes I see it that it gets overworked and obsessed, but still having the training that you just needed. I don't think that you can, you know, do without that. You still need it as much as you need the gun, because there's a good chance that you will be messing up in that moment, you know.
Sure.
I know of stories where people without any, like this woman probably just went, bought the gun and actually saved her life. There's sometimes incidents in where the lack of training got people, you know, got them killed, or even the wrong, not the wrong gun, but maybe not a good enough. For example, there was this case in Argentina where a security guard, right? He was driving the truck thing with money, a cash in transit type of vehicle, and they got hit, right? And it wasn't just like a couple of thugs. It was like a Argentine type of gang, which going after a cash in transit vehicle, it's kind of well prepared for that. And he got involved in a shooting, and, you know, dozens of rounds fired in each direction. And one of those, he's shooting at them, they're shooting at him. What gets hit when you're shooting at someone and he's shooting back? The hand. The hand of he was shooting with got shot, and he had his 1911 in the other hand, but he couldn't reload because he had one wounded hand.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that if you go to the classes, they explain to you how to, you know, why should I be learning how to do a reload with just one hand? Right. And it's because of these kind of little things that there is a possibility of it happening that you end up getting killed because of that. If the guy had known how to do a reload with just one hand, right, that may have saved his life. Or like you were just saying, the high point, it has a bad reputation, but it's not that much of a bad gun. It's actually a pretty good one. And you were mentioning how she kept on shooting. If she had maybe a shotgun with a couple of shots, she fires those two, and the guy comes back with a gun, then she nails her, because she didn't have enough firepower to keep that lead down range, so as to send the guy away. Right. So sometimes I do agree with the devil being in the little details, but at the same time I also agree with it being over obsessed and becoming more of an obsession about things people like doing rather than what's actually needed.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said, actually, and I think this is actually something I've never like come out on the record or made a video or anything about this, but I think one of the things that my wife and I talked about is before we get more guns, because we have a couple, but before we get more, we want to like get training on the ones that we have. Yeah. And so I actually did after I got that handgun, I mentioned I took a couple classes. I took Intro to Home Defense, and then I took Combat Focused Shooting last summer, both. And I would say like ammo too. Like before you go run off and buy another gun, like make sure you have training and ammo for the thing that you do have, because being trained on like a 22 is better than like being not trained on an AR. You know, in a lot of situations. I think,
you know what, for people that want to keep it, and this for anyone listening that wants to keep it very simple, because like you, maybe they don't care that much about guns, but simply understand that you need them for this kind of thing. You know, getting a 9mm like you have, and getting, if you want to get another one, like getting a rifle like an AK, you know, with those two guns, that's all the guns you're going to be needing for the rest of your natural life. You have your Glock 9mm, you know how to use it, or in your case, your Smith.
Smith, yeah.
You know how to use that, then you're good. And with a good amount of training and knowing how to use those tools in those scenarios, that's setting you up for 99% of the things you're kind of likely to encounter, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe one of the things that I at least appreciated many times was body armor, which is something that doesn't get mentioned a lot. Or it sounds, yeah, it sounds like too much, but you know what? You mentioned before the rattling on the door, correct? I've had that happen as well.
Scary.
If you have the time and you have the body armor there, you have your flashlight, you have your gun, and you're gonna be using it for this guy trying to break in. If you have a couple more seconds, you put on your body armor, and it makes all the difference in the world if you're catching a bullet. If you're unfortunate enough, and it costs like what, $200-$300, even buying surplus that still works. And guys still will have 30 guns and not body armor or not ammunition or not even take a class on how to actually use those guns.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. 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 I think it's just about balance, like you said earlier, just balancing it out and trying to be a solid generalist before you get like with preps anyway. Like you say, if you have hobbies, that's your hobby. You can't really turn that off, and you shouldn't. That's part of life. But if you're really trying to do stuff in the name of prepping, like it should be about first being a solid generalist, and then coming back and like working on every area again, so that your skill set's expanding and whatever. But
going nuts on. You were talking about the obsession with cooking stuff and doing like 1,000 million recipes for rice, this and that. I like cooking like everyone else, I suppose, and it's not my thing. But yeah, again, just like some guys are obsessed and overlook lots of other things that should require their attention. In other cases, it's just focusing on food alone.
Right.
And food is great. Don't get me wrong. You're going to be needing it.
Yeah.
But
or I mean, like we could go on down the list. Fire starting, right? Like bushcrafting. A lot of the skills, like building elaborate shelters out in the woods. Like that is a pretty cool skill.
Yeah.
But dude, I mean, knowing 49 ways to start a fire, like taking off your shoelaces and starting like a like a drill fire and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know about you, but if it happened to you, please feel free to say so. But I never fixed any serious problem I've had, I think, ever by starting a fire with a fire drill.
Yeah.
I've carved my own spoon, but right.
I think it's cool stuff, but yeah. Anyway, we could beat that into the ground, but
the bank is gonna repossess my house. I'm gonna be starting a fire to.
Oh shoot! I don't have a good budget in place. Flint and steel.
The fire steel. Yeah, it is stuff that can come in handy in certain situations, and you should have it. And you should know the knowledge. You should have the knowledge to use it. But obsessing over that, one of the things I've seen is attempts, and this is something I've came across when I first started writing about all this stuff about modern survivalism and such, was that they would be trying to make attempts of bringing the wilderness survival stuff into the urban, modern, and normal life type of thing. Survival. So you would be picking up a book that said urban survival on the cover, or survival for when things go wrong, and it starts talking about building shelters or starting fires with different tools. When things go wrong, just running to the woods and becoming Mr. Bushcraft is not really solving anything.
Yeah.
But this is also again linked to what people like doing. People like going out camping. Yeah, being outdoors, setting up a tent. The fire is great. We all love bring our mushrooms, our marshmallows, and the
And some of us mushrooms,
or,
right?
or mushrooms or whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a practical, so many things. What did you do in terms of your food preps? How did you attack that or solve that?
Yeah, so okay, so this is another thing that if people watch me, they know I kind of feel like somewhat strongly about.
Yeah,
Um, I actually just put together a really cool guide on my site. I don't know if you've seen it or if any of the viewers out there have, but it's pretty cool. It's a really pretty, like nicely designed guide. It asks a lot of questions to really help you engineer and come up with your own like food storage plan.
right.
What I don't like, and I know I'm like I talk myself out of so much money because there's a lot of money in this.
Yeah,
I don't like the prepackaged long term like the thought of buying a bunch of freeze dried food for like
yeah,
6 months or a year. If you're gonna buy that stuff for 2 weeks and you want to put it in a bug out bag, I think that's great. It's super light. It is pretty tasty for a short period of time, like before you've had it every day for a long time. And I think that stuff's cool, but I really just would encourage people to stay away from the like I just want to get my food storage done. I'm gonna buy this 1 year food supply
right.
from like Wise Foods for $2,500 or something like that. I would really encourage people, and again, like we talked about the hobby thing a second ago, and like yeah, you can get into anything as much as you want. With food storage, I don't see it as that. I don't think that taking the time and the effort and energy to like really think out your own food storage, I don't think that's getting unnecessarily deep into it. I think that you should do that. I think that that buying a 6 months food supply that's freeze dried in a bucket is kind of doing yourself a disservice in terms of cost because it costs a lot more than just patiently buying a little bit at a time as you go grocery shopping every trip, washing out for sales, things like that. I also think that it's not that great. I don't think it tastes that good after you've had it for a long time. I went on a hunt, a caribou hunt to Alaska in 2012, and we ate Mountain House freeze-dried food every single meal for 9 days or so. And by the end of the trip, like we could not eat the stuff. There was two guys I was with. There was four of us all together. Two of the guys I was with, excuse me, were big dudes. I mean, they weren't just like picky, like little bird pecker like type eaters.
Yeah, yeah.
These were guys that could put down some food, and they still wouldn't touch it, just because it doesn't taste that good after a long period of time. And so what we would do is like starve all day, and then at night when we came home with caribou, we'd take some of the backstrap and like do that
Right.
over the fire, and that was awesome. But anyway, so I think in terms of cost, I think in terms of taste, and just keeping it real, like rotating through your food storage and things like that, I think the best way to do it is to do it on your own. And so that's what I've tried to do. I think that I just actually wrote a pretty cool article on like 17 places that you can keep food storage, even if you live in a small place. Places like, underneath your furniture, behind your furniture, setting up a curtain against your wall, trying to find space underneath the stairs. I don't want you to like rearrange your life to do it, but I think it's important. I think that you should try to engineer and kind of create your own food storage with cans and non-perishable foods that you're already eating. And then I think that should be like when you go to like make spaghetti for dinner, you should go to your food storage, use that food, and then when you make your shopping trip, then you put it back in your food storage. So your food storage is just like a shock absorber between the food that's going in your mouth and the food that you're buying.
Right.
And that way, it's always being rotated, you always have it, and it's always stuff that you eat. I think that's the ideal. I understand that not everybody can do it perfectly, but I would really shoot for that.
Yeah, I started getting like very interested in last few period of last few months and such about what exactly is it that I was eating and what it was doing to me. I noticed that strange thing since we came here, since we left Argentina, the food here is not as diluted as it was over there, because over there, because of the economic crisis thing, the food would be so mixed up with other starch so as to make it cheaper that it was of less nutritional value. So I started looking at exactly what it was that we were eating, and many of the things that we thought were healthy, eating lots and lots of meat products, because that's good protein. That's what you really need, and lots of milk and cheese, because that's a nature's best food or whatnot. And you start realizing, maybe it's not as great as they say it is. Maybe someone wants you to eat that way because they benefit from that.
Yeah.
And going down the way, we readjusted the way we eat a lot, and I'm much happier the way I eat now, with much more vegetables than I used to before. Healthier as well. Also, the information about food and when it actually expires. For example, when you buy, I don't know if you eat this or not, the smashed potato dry flakes.
Yeah.
How is it you call them? The instant mashed
instant
potatoes? Right, exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that stuff.
That stuff, you can store it for a couple years beyond the expiration date. It doesn't change the way it tastes. It's the exact same thing.
Right. And I think, and I don't want to like get too far off on this, or I'm not a doctor, but I do think that medication falls into that same category, especially in the United States, where there's it's an interesting climate. Again, I'm not going to get super political about this, but I think that what you said just makes a lot of sense. Look at who's benefiting from when you throw things away and how long you keep things. I think there's a lot of medications that you can store for a lot longer than the advised shelf date on it. And I don't want to kill anybody, so you do your own research, but I save stuff. I mean, if I get painkillers or I get antibiotics and stuff, I mean, that stuff stays around my house for a long time.
And when you realize that there's billions of bucks being made out of feeding you certain stuff, convincing you that you need, I mean, it's not really that different from buying the latest, coolest cell phone.
Yeah.
Convincing you that,
Consumption.
Consuming stuff that you probably don't even need, or it's not even healthy for you. But you're the idea that, well, you need fast food because it's convenient, or because it's convenient for you. It's not maybe it is, but because of convenience you're gonna be killing yourself with stuff. And then you realize that there's billions being made in keeping you sick, and there's billions being made in selling you drugs to keep you alive, because they made you sick with the stuff that they convinced you needed to buy. It gets all political and stuff, but I don't know. I just came to that realization not that long ago, and changed lots of the things that I used to do.
Yeah. There's that old, I don't know what language it is, something besides English, besides American, maybe Latin. It's que bono, or something like that. Que bueno, basically who benefits? Who is it that's benefiting from whatever situation? Whether it's food, whether it's the oil thing, whether it's the fact that we're at war, whether it's the fact that there's new Apple iPhones that come out every single 4 months, and it's que bono, and all of it. Who is it that's benefiting? I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a perfect.
That's a pretty big part about, at least the way I see it, managing your, because at the end of the day, the money that you make, it's your time, it's effort and time that you spend. The more they convince you need to spend more of it, means the less time you will actually have yourself.
Yep.
So being frugal is not just about saving money, but also about saving time for yourself. So it's at least I find it to be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anything? What would be the thing that you like to tell people? One piece of advice that you like to tell people in from where you're coming in terms of preparedness.
Yeah, so I think that, again, I touched on this in the beginning, but my advice, the one thing that I would just love to go on the record for and be burning people's minds and hearts and stuff for, is just that average people can be prepared. And no matter what your situation is right now, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're on government money and you still can't pay the bills, and like no matter how unideal your situation is, there's something that you can do right now, or some things, a handful of things probably that you can do right now that you're not doing that you can do to be a little bit more prepared. Maybe it's nothing money related or physical situations. Maybe it's just having conversation with your kids and saying like, hey, where do you want to meet if the phone lines go down, you know? Or like some of those talks. Maybe it's, I don't know. But basically like quit looking at what you can't do. Just look at what you can do. Right. And I've tried to make my channel, my YouTube channel and my website kind of about that. Is like, you know what? I get that some people aren't gonna change their lives drastically, and maybe even if you could, maybe you don't need to. But setting aside the drastic stuff, like just what can you do? Look at what you can do, and then do it. So that's kind of my message, maybe, that I would leave with people. And I still like I have a video that I think is. I can't remember actually. It might not be my YouTube channel introduction anymore, but basically like I still get excited about surfing, and I still get excited about like playing video games like at the arcade with my friends sometimes, you know. That stuff's okay. It's okay. You don't have to completely abandon everything that you're doing. I think that you can be an average Joe and you can still be prepared to.
What video game are you playing right now? What video game are you playing right this moment?
You want to know the honest truth?
Honestly,
this is going to get embarrassing right now. Okay, because it is what day is it today? The 20 in we're on the same day. The 26th of July, I believe, 2014. Yesterday at work, a coworker and myself played the original Mortal Kombat for Super Nintendo.
Man, that was awesome.
And we beat it. We carved like a half hour out of our day, and we took turns passing the paddle back and forth to each other. We beat.
Did you know any finish him move or not?
No.
Then you're not a full-blown gamer nerd.
No. I'm not a gamer nerd at all. In fact, when I was referencing
down, up.
What'd you say?
Forward, down, up, punch.
Yeah. No, so we were doing some of the moves like, you know, Scorpion's harpoon thing. Like we were doing some of that stuff, but we didn't know any of those like fancy moves at the end. But yeah, I mean, really, like when I said video games a second ago, I honestly, the thing that I love the most about playing video games is going to those old nickel arcades and paying like $2 to get in, and then all the games are like a nickel. I go crazy for that stuff. I don't do Halo. I don't do any of the cool video games. You know.
You don't have an Xbox?
I don't have an Xbox. Nope. I don't have in fact, I don't have anything right now. I think we had a Wii, and then we got rid of it when we moved a few months ago. But yeah, I don't have any systems, so I'm really not a gamer. But
no, you're not. No, you're not.
Yeah. No, I just threw that out because you can be anybody. You can be whatever you are today, right now. There's probably still some things that you can do to be a little bit more prepared, and I just encourage people to do that. So don't feel like you have to go change. Average Joes can be prepared.
What your please mention your channel and your website just for guys that want to keep checking your stuff up.
Yeah. The name of my website is TheDailyPrep.com, and you can also find it. The YouTube channel is just called The Daily Prep. On TheDailyPrep.com, on my actual site, I do go above and beyond what I put on my YouTube channel. I do like more in-depth write-ups of the things that I make videos about. I have some cooler like downloadable resources. I have a resource. I have a guide that I made called The Prepper's First Pistol. 6 steps to buying your first pistol. The kind of the average Joe way to do it. That I think you should do it, and that worked for me. I have a pretty cool food storage guide I mentioned. So I have a bunch of other additional helps on the site. But if that's not your thing and you just like YouTube, check me out there, The Daily Prep. You can also find me on Twitter. It's a little bit more complicated, but I can link it up for you. It's Herbivalist Dan. So basically, urban survivalist smashed together. Herbivalist Dan is my Twitter handle. You guys can follow me there and stuff. So I'd love to connect. I'm super, super active. There, like to this day, on YouTube, there's probably been, I have like 400 and something videos. There's probably been 50 comments that I didn't respond to. So if you leave a comment that says "nice job, bro," I will probably respond to you and say thanks, bro. I'm like really active in there. So love to meet you guys. If I can help at all, I'd love to. I don't have all the answers. I'm the guinea pig, but happy to share what I know.
Great. Well, it was just fantastic talking with you, and we have to do it again, of course.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thank you again. Seriously, this was like a pretty cool moment for me to be able to chat with you because I followed you for a long time. So thanks for having me.
Thanks. Great talking with you. Take care, man. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you, buddy.